letter, sound, and syllable fluency activity. So once again, you want to make sure you're modeling for your students. My turn. Ing, d, a, b, e. Your turn.
Ung, o,
If a student makes a mistake, you would say my turn and correct them, and then you would say your turn and have them repeat that after you. We are now going to review our previously learned sounds. So I noticed that on my diagnostic assessments and benchmark data, my students are confusing short E and short I, so I'm going to take time to review that prior to beginning our new lesson. The sound is eh sound. Write down the letter that makes that sound. Good job. What letter says eh?
E.
Excellent job. The letter E is a vowel, and the letter E says eh. Our next sound is eh. What is the sound? Write down the letter that says eh. Good. What letter says eh?
E.
The letter E says eh. What letter says eh? Excellent job. The letter I says eh. And the letter I is a vowel. Nice job. B and D are usually common consonants that need to be practiced. G and Q, P. So you just want to make sure you're using data to figure out which patterns your students or which sounds your students need to review on a regular basis. And now we focus on reviewing patterns. So if, at this point in the Beyond CVC lesson, I know my students have learned their digraphs, their blends, they've learned inflectional endings. So I want to think about which ones they need more practice with and practice them here. So I would say the pattern is W. WH is a digraph that can say W, like in when. What is the word?
When.
Tell me what sounds you hear in when. So W, Excellent job. WH says W, E says F, and N says when. Good job. Now I want you to write a word with that WH pattern. Then your word is whip. Whip. What is the word?
Whip.
Good job. Write down the letters that match those sounds. Good job. So you want to think about the patterns that you need to review and review them in this section. And then we get into our new pattern for today, and that's where we are learning that AR says R. What is the sound?
R.
R. We can spell the R sound with the letters AR. Watch my mouth. R.
R.
Excellent. You want to focus on those articulatory gestures when you are teaching your students new sounds or patterns. So if you open up your speaker notes, it's going to explain to you that in R-controlled syllables, when a single syllable has a letter A followed by an R, and the R is controlling the sound of the vowel, and it changes its sound like in car. It's not making a short or long vowel sound, but the sound is being controlled by the R. And it's the word part that we should look for when we are reading the words. If you print out the articulatory gesture cards, it's going to walk you through the explanation of what your mouth is doing as you produce that sound. All right, the pattern is OR. Pattern?
Or.
OR. Excellent job. This is also an R-controlled vowel where the R is controlling the vowel's sound, right? So you want to pay attention to what your mouth is doing as you are producing this sound. OR can be spelled with O-R-E as well, like in store. And then we get into our new pattern for the day, which is going to be What is the pattern? Excellent job. Like in fern. Give me a thumbs up if you hear the sound in my word. Bird. Good job. Shop. Farm. Good job. Her. Excellent job. So today we're going to be reading and writing words that have the sound. And then you're going to notice there's some more advanced phonemic awareness activities in the beyond CDC level. So as you notice, as you progress through, you're going to have some more advanced phonemic awareness skills. We have sir. Tell me what sounds you hear in sir. Add t after
Stir.
Excellent job. There's some opening boxes up top you can use to help you to point to or to draw in to help your students visualize where that new sound needs to go. You want to model first, guide your students through the activity, and then give some individual turns. For this activity, they're now deleting that second phoneme, so stir. Tell me what sounds you hear in stir. Excellent. Now take away the t.
Sir.
Sir, nice job. And then we have substitution. We have scab. What is the word?
Scab.
Tell me what sounds you hear in scab.
Ab.
Change the k to o. What is my new word? So instead of scab, you have o ab.
Slab.
And our new word is slab. Right? So you can use your hand gestures for visuals. You can use the opening boxes at the top, but you want to make sure you're providing those visual cues to help your students work through these advanced skills. And then we get into phoneme segmentation. So the word is birth.
Birth.
Tell me what sounds in birth.
Birth.
Excellent job. You can use your hand visuals, or you can draw circles inside of the boxes to show each individual sound in the word. You want to make sure you're modeling it, giving your students a chance to practice it, and then having those individual turns. And then we're going to practice reading words with that pattern. As we approach the beyond CDC level, you want to draw their attention to look for any patterns that they recognize in the word. So when I look at this first word, I notice ER, I know ER says and there's a diaphragm. So now I'm going to blend and read this word. Perch. Perch. As they move through the lessons, you can begin to move to the continuous blending routine once you notice that your students are consistently decoding CDC words. Once they can read about, I would say 12 to 14 words per minute, they're ready to move to that continuous blending routine, which is just scooping up all those sounds together. All right, what patterns do you notice in this word? What do you notice? Excellent job. Now let's blend and read this word. Are you ready?
Verb.
Excellent job. Right? You can have this, do a few together as a class, and then you want to make sure that as you get into the word fluency activity, you have students practicing individually to really hold them accountable to recognize those patterns. At first, you may need to ask them, what patterns do you see? On their papers, if you print out the papers, the student workbooks, they can underline the patterns first, and then you can have them go through and practice reading those words. And then we have a review of previously learned patterns, and then we get into our word dictation routine here, which is where they're going to say the sounds. They're going to hear the word, segment the sound, and then write the word. The word is her. What is the word? Her. Tell me all the sounds you hear in her. And then write the letters that match those sounds. For a scaffold, you can draw a line for each sound that they hear and have them write the letters that match those sounds on the line. So H says, and then the ER says Okay, and here you could do a word chaining activity. For this one, I can have them add a final sound. Her. Add d to the end of her. What is my new word?
Heard.
Excellent job. Tell me the sounds you hear in heard. Nice job. Go ahead and write that word on your paper. Nice job. H says ER says and D says d. Heard. Okay, and then you can continue through your word chaining activity and help them with those word dictation skills. And now we have our different types of part words: flash, temporarily irregular, and truly irregular, which is only about 4% of words. Here, this word is temporarily because once your students have been taught that ER says it's no longer a part word. It will become a flash word. So ER is the tricky part because ER is saying The word is her. What do you think about when I say her? What are you thinking about?
Like a young girl.
A girl. Do you think about anything else? Could be a woman. I heard you mention woman, right? So this activity is getting your students to think about words and think about what comes to mind when they hear these words. That when they're reading, we want them to really visualize and start to create pictures in their minds to help them better understand what they are reading. And we can do that through these quick activities on a regular basis. And then you want to progress through all of your heart words. And then we get into our verbal reasoning. Together, jointly, and alone. Repeat after me. Together, jointly, alone. Which words go together? Which words do you think go together?
Together and jointly.
Together and jointly. When you hear the word join, what do you think about?
People like joining together.
People are coming together. So if you don't know a word, you want to look at a word carefully and look at the parts of the word that you may recognize, because that's going to help you to better understand the word. That's exactly what good readers do, right? Because you know that when you join a group, you're becoming part of it. Yes. So now you are together with other people. So it makes sense that those two words would go together. How come alone doesn't belong?
Because alone is like you're all alone. No one's with you. Like isolated.
Excellent. And then here's a review of heart words. You can have your students practice the same routine as the word fluency. They go through and they say the words accurately and automatically. Here we're reviewing syllable types. At this point in the Beyond CBC lessons, we've already learned closed syllables, open syllables, and are controlled. So this is quick. I'm going to give my students one of the words at the top, and I'm going to show them first. So car is an R controlled syllable because the AR is controlling the vowel sound. Me. What type of syllable type is me? Is the vowel open? Is the vowel closed? Or is it an R controlled?
Open.
It's an open syllable. Right? This is quick. Just get them to recognize those syllable types so that once they get into those multisyllabic words and they really start decoding words, it's going to come natural to them, where they don't really have to focus on all of those division rules because they already know the syllable types and they know that they can naturally start to divide the words in their head because they've already so comfortable with them. And now we have fluency phrases. Repeat after me. He is her.
He is her.
She lost her.
She lost her.
That is her.
That is her.
I wish I met her.
I wish I met her.
So for fluency phrases, you can practice swooping up the phrases so that your students read all those words in a breath. So go ahead.
She held her. Ask her for. It was her.
Good job.
I wish we were.
Good job.
All of us were.
Right? And you start to group them into meaningful phrases, meaningful groups, so your students become more fluent with their reading. And then we get into our decodables. So first you want your students to identify the pattern. If they're using the principal workbooks, then they can underline the pattern at their seats. And then you can call on students to tell you which words have that R-controlled pattern. Which words have the pattern in them?
Serb.
Good.
Curb.
Excellent. So you're just going to go through and have them identify that pattern site. And then you're going to go through and model what fluent reading sounds like for that first sentence. And then you can have them, so once a day serves her curve. Your turn.
She thinks about her day.
Good. I like how you connected she thinks about automatically. She thinks about her day. Right? So you can go through and have your students decide how to scoop the phrases, or you can already pre-scoop those phrases for them to help them with their fluency. And then ask comprehension questions once you're done. Ask those who, what, where, why, when, and how questions. And it only takes about a minute or two. You don't have to use all of those questions. But start building those comprehension skills with And then you'll notice once you get to the Beyond CBC level, halfway to the Beyond CBC level, content passages are going to be incorporated into your lesson. So for these activities, you want to model fluent reading. Once again, I love to eat the corner store. I know it's there. I can walk there in my sleep. But before that, you want to read the title. What do you know about the corner store? What's a corner store?
It's like a store that has a bunch of different foods, like a bunch of different chef sections with like worms or snacks, candy.
Excellent. So you want your students to think, you want them to be thinking about what do they already know about the topic, right? The topic is about a corner store. And so then you want to pull any words that your students may need to know that are related to the corner store. And then you want your students to hear you model and read fluently. And then you want to give them a chance to read. This is kind of like if you're going to do Dibbles progress monitoring. If your students don't know a word, you don't want them sitting there and guessing. You can tell them that word. And then once you're done reading the passage, you can go through and show them how to decode that word. But here you really want to focus on that fluency, so use those scooping phrases. You're going to notice that the same story is repeated for several days to help your students with those repeated readings and to strengthen their overall fluency. And then there's, once again, comprehension questions. If you open up your speaker notes, there's going to be some questions that can guide you. There we go. After your students are done reading, and there's also some scaffolds that can support you with your instruction. And now we have our sentence dictation. You're going to notice that the sentence is already planned out for you in your speaker notes. The fern is in the garden. What is the sentence?
The fern is in the garden.
Good. How many words are in that sentence?
6.
Good. So you can draw a line for each word. All right. And so now keep repeating that sentence to yourself. Good. Now go ahead and write your sentence. I like how I can see you repeating it to yourself in your head. I can see your mouth is saying all of the words in that sentence. Nice job. The is a heart word. The fern is in the garden. Nice job. Check your sentence. Make sure you start with an uppercase letter and make sure you end it with your punctuation mark. All right, the fern is in the garden. Who or what is in the garden?
The fern.
The fern, right? And then what is our action word?
In.
Right? The fern is in, right? Will be part of our verb. And then what about our object?
The garden.
The garden. All right, excellent job. So here once again is thinking about some of those grammar concepts and just incorporating them into your daily practice to help your students understand the structure of sentences and how different parts and different words are put together to create a complete thought. What do you notice?
There are a bunch of kids, about 6 kids on the climbing wall.
Why do you think they're on the climbing wall?
Because they...
Hold on. Answer the complete sentence. I think
they're on the climbing wall because they're all climbing upwards and they all have harnesses on.
Okay, but why do you think they're on the climbing wall? Why do they decide to go to this place?
Because the climbing wall is fun.
Okay.
And it's enjoyable, like to spend your time.
Excellent. Do you think you would want to go rock climbing? Yeah. Why would you want to go rock climbing?
Because it's. I think it's fun because there's a bunch of different things you could do on it.
Excellent. So once again, this is using this photograph. I'm just getting my students talking, practicing oral language skills. The goal is for them to be talking in complete sentences and complete thoughts, and to really support them with their thinking. Then you can really start to focus on some of those comprehension strategies and skills using a photograph. Oral language